A final case that we'll discuss in connection with the objective theory of contracts is Lucy v. Zehmer, decided by the Supreme Court of Virginia in 1954. The case further illustrates the rules on enforceability of a contract based on outward appearance of the agreement between two parties. The case involves an alleged contract by which the defendants, the Zehmers, sold their farm to the plaintiffs, the Lucys. The Zehmers owned some land in Dinwiddie County, Virginia, which was known as the Ferguson Farm. The Lucys had known the Zehmers for many years and had previously expressed interest in purchasing the farm. A few years before the case, Mr. Zehmer had even orally agreed to sell the farm to Mr. Lucy, but later declined to complete the sale. In December 1952, Lucy and Zehmer met at a restaurant owned by Zehmer. They drank whiskey together and discussed the possible sale of the farm. Zehmer then wrote on the back of the restaurant's receipt that we hereby agree to sell to Lucy the Ferguson farm complete for $50,000, title satisfactory to buyer. The note was signed by Mr. Zehmer and his wife. Zehmer later alleged that his wife had only signed the note because he had assured her that his intent to sell the farm was not serious. Lucy, however, seemed unaware of the apparent joke. He hired an attorney to complete the purchase. When the attorney contacted Zehmer, Zehmer insisted that he had never intended to sell the farm and that the note had been written in jest, consistent with the jovial atmosphere and drunken camaraderie the parties were sharing that evening. Lucy brought a lawsuit to enforce the contract. The issue for the court was to decide whether or not a valid contract had formed between the parties. Despite the Zehmers' claim that there was no intention to be bound contractually on their part, the court still found a valid contract for the purchase and sale of Ferguson Farm. The court did so by looking into the circumstances of the case. How long was the agreement negotiated? Were the parties incapacitated? What were the details and language of the contract? Was the price appropriate for a contract of this type? And so on. The court looked at these circumstances objectively under the objective theory of contracts. And because of the objective theory, it is immaterial whether or not one party was simply joking or wasn't serious about the sale. As the court noted, an agreement or mutual assent is of course essential to a valid contract, but the law imputes to a person an intention corresponding to the reasonable meaning of his words and acts. If his words and acts, judged by a reasonable standard, manifest an intention to agree, it is immaterial what may be the real but unexpressed state of his mind. Based on this, the court found that a reasonable interpretation of what had occurred suggested that there was a valid contract for the sale of Zehmer's farm. Why would a court not consider subjective factors such as a party's inner thoughts, feelings, intent, etc.? The main reason is the need for clarity. First of all, it is difficult to prove what a party's subjective thoughts and state of mind were. Allowing this kind of evidence would make proceedings exceedingly difficult. Second, and importantly, allowing parties to dispute the validity of a contract solely based on their subjective intentions would make commercial transactions complicated and uncertain. If a party is not able to rely on statements that the other party conveys, but would always have to ask itself whether these are serious or not, it would become exceedingly difficult to enter into contractual relationships. How can parties protect themselves and avoid unforeseen consequences in contractual relations? It is essential to make it very clear what your intentions are, what you expect from a potential contract, and whether you are joking or not. Better still, avoid irony and joking when it comes to contractual negotiations. Remember that under the objective theory, everything you say or do will be given the meaning that a reasonable person would give these statements or actions.